Hello, welcome to EMT class. If you were in the classroom, I'd have you fill out the sign-in forms and get the paperwork and all that stuff. But if you're having to do this from home right now, you have to do that the first day of class when you return. These are all things that we're going to go over. One thing I do want to mention is the bag. So I usually hand out a little bag that'll have a few little supplies in it, like gloves and a triangular bandage and a windlass, so you can make a tourniquet and just a couple other little goodies. But we'll have that for you when you first make it to class. So hopefully you're ready. I always like to show this video. This is something I saw one day on television. It does not have any audio, so just watch it and see if this was gonna if this is what is going to happen to you. Hopefully you will not pass out on your first call, although I have worked with some people that get car sick, which kind of surprises me that you would pick a job where you ride in the back of an ambulance if you get car sick, but they make it work. Kahoot is where we would go next if you were in class, and this is the program that we use for a lot of our presentations. Don't worry, you don't have to do anything special. When we do a Kahoot the next time you're in class, you'll be able to log in, play along with this, and see if you can win. I usually, after class is done, get a link to the Kahoot, send it out again so you have an opportunity to play it even if you miss class, or if you just want to try it again so you can do better your second time through. Now, I also take some time to go through the building. I want to talk about parking first. And parking, you can park behind the building, which is highlighted there in yellow. If you're in the evening class, that's probably the easiest place to park. Day classes, coming in at 8 is usually not too bad. If it is full, there is a parking lot also highlighted in yellow across the street from the Bevel Center, and you just have to park and walk across the street. I do that a lot of mornings, especially if it's a nice day, so that's not a big deal. Just those are the two places you can park. There is a circular parking lot in the front of the Bevel Center. That is not where we get to park. And then we walk through the department. I have a little bit of a tour. We've moved offices, so I need to update the tour a little bit, but there is a tour that you can look at in Blackboard that will show you where everything is. Next, I'd like to go over the syllabus. This is also in the learning management system, which we use Blackboard right now. So I encourage you to go to that, look through it, see if you understand it all. Make sure you don't have any questions, or if you do, you contact me. Next thing, and you'll get this the first time you come to class, is your lab manual and lecture notes. This is something that we will use daily in class. There are things that we're going to do in lab as far as skills, worksheets, things that we'll do in small groups in class that are assignments, and then some empty outline lecture notes that you can fill in as you read through your book or you listen to the lectures in class. Blackboard, I usually introduce Blackboard at this time. This is our learning management system. It can be a little confusing at first, so if you're having any problems, please let me know when you come to class, and I'll walk you through it. Now, Remind is something that I use for class. This is for the spring 2022. So if this is another semester that you're watching this, you'll have another link that is in Blackboard. If it is a spring semester for you, you can scan this code, or you can go to Blackboard and go follow the link there to sign up for Remind. Remind will work like a text messaging program, so we can send messages back and forth without having to exchange the actual phone numbers. I don't mind if you have my number. If you text me directly, that's okay, but I do like to use Remind, especially if I have an announcement I need to get out quickly to everybody. Like, I don't know, I have a flat tire, could be late for class. I'll send a message out through Remind. Another program that we use is Flipgrid. Again, you can follow the link in Blackboard or scan this QR code. And this will take you to a program that I use for you to make videos to show us how to do skills. And not all the skills are going to be done in Flipgrid, but there are a few. Now, if the off chance something happens and we have to miss a day, we have to go back to virtual learning, we'll use Flipgrid a lot more. Your first assignment is just to introduce yourself to the class. This is private only to our group of students, so you won't be public with this, but this is what we use to record some videos. So let's talk a little bit about learning and how do we learn. You have probably heard of the VARC, visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic learning styles, and unfortunately, there's no evidence to show that they do any good at all. If I told you to learn to ride a bicycle by only reading about it, you'd have a hard time. Or if I told you to C-spine a patient by only listening to me talk about it, you'd have a hard time. Sometimes we have to get hands-on. Sometimes we do have to read. The good news is, even though there's no evidence to support the idea that matching activities to one learning style improves learning, we also can learn by all methods. So no matter which way we do things that particular day, you can still learn. You may have ways that you prefer to learn, and generally that's people in my classes like to sit and just listen to me lecture. Unfortunately, that's not very active, that's very passive, which means you're not engaged in your learning, so I don't do much of that type of classroom activity. For Bloom's taxonomy, this is something that came out in I think the 60s, 70s, about how we learn. And you may have seen this somewhere along the way, but we have these different levels of learning. And when we're thinking about facts and trying to define terms, we think of that as a remember or understand level. And then we need to take those things and actually learn to apply them and analyze how we did with them. And that's where we are most of the time in class, is we're working at the apply and analyze stage. Which means it's your responsibility to remember some of the facts and figures and basic stuff that we have to. And you're going to do that through your studying, your reading, your online lessons, and we will touch again in class on these, so it's not like we're going to not do it at all. But you can read the book at home. You can't run a simulation at home, or at least not as well as what we would do in the lab. So we're going to be doing a lot more hands-on type stuff in class and a lot less reading or PowerPoint or going over lectures like that. So what all works with this? So some of the things that we do is what's called a flipped classroom, and I kind of alluded to that already. You're going to read the book, you're going to do your online lessons at home. And then when you come to class, we're going to take that, answer questions on it, and then learn how to apply that knowledge in an actual situation. And we call that active learning. Again, a lot of students don't particularly like this at first. It takes a little bit to get used to because you are going to be doing things, not just sitting there writing down some notes once in a while. We're going to be doing a lot of things in the lab and practicing skills. A lot of skills that EMTs have to learn, all the way from checking pulses and blood pressures to applying backboards and learning how to ventilate a patient with a bag valve mask. All sorts of skills that we're going to be practicing in class. And then we're going to take those individual skills, put them together, and turn them into simulations. So this would be like a pretend call or a mock call. We'll have a mannequin in a different spot in the building, and you and a group of 2 or 3 of you will respond to that call and then take care of the patient. So what are you responsible for this semester? 1, before class, read the chapters that we're going over with that day. And you can follow along with the schedule in the learning management system and see, which is Blackboard, and see where we are and what we're doing, what we've covered and what we have upcoming, and read those particular chapters. Each of these chapters has a terminology quiz. One of the things we have identified is that students oftentimes went to National Registry, which is the national certification exam, and said, I didn't know these terms. So we added these in, and you have one for every chapter of the book. Now there's 46 chapters. You can take these as many times as you want. Most of them are about 10 to 20 questions, multiple choice, just to make sure you're familiar with the terms in the book. And if you want to use the book while you take these, that's fine. You can be doing this on your own before class. We have a program called Soft Chalk, which we create online lessons, and we have a lot of them that supplement each chapter. And we also have some that go along with the labs. And in an EMT, they're not required, but if you do all of them, it'll replace your lowest test grade. So it's a way to get 100 as a test grade. I also think they're just great supplemental material, go a little bit more than maybe what the chapter covers, and gives a better feel for what I kind of expect out of you, or what I think you need to learn for that chapter. A lot of them do contain videos of me explaining things that we would have in class. So if you ever miss a class, you can do the Soft Chalk lessons, and you'll hear basically the same sort of stuff that I would have talked about in class. As you are reading your book, we're going to take some notes as you're in class. If I have any sort of lecture, or even during the Kahoots, you're going to take notes. We'll talk more about a way to take notes as you read your book a little bit later. And then as you go through all these things and you have a question, feel free to text me or send me a message or remind, or even in Blackboard, and I'll do my best to answer it as quickly as I can, or write it down, and then when you come to class, ask me these questions. So during the class, those things that you had taken notes on that you weren't sure about, ask me those questions. Take notes. Again, this is something that many times I'll start a lecture, I'll start a presentation, we'll do a Kahoot, and there's not a single piece of paper out or pen or pencil that's being moved, and nobody's taking notes. So make sure you take some notes as we go. You even have the lab manual and lecture notes. A lot of times what I'm talking about, you can find in the lecture note spot and fill that in. These are Think, Pair, Shares are an activity that we do to well, let me just back it up and say, first I'm going to give you a question or topic. I'm going to let you think about it for a couple of minutes. Then you're going to pair up with a partner, and you two would discuss those questions and see how you answer them, and then you would share them with the class. Kahoots, again, Kahoot is something that I love to use. We're going to do a lot of these throughout the semester, like a whole lot of these, and even if you're not in class, I'll send them out so you get a chance to play them on your own. Not quite as much fun as having them in class where you get to compete with your classmates, see if you can win, but it's still knowledge. There's worksheets that we're going to fill out. These are usually done in small groups. There's a series of questions to make you think a lot more about what the material is. These are all in your lab manuals. We will go over it after you're done. We'll discuss it as a class and talk about the answers. You will then take a picture of it and upload it to the assignment. So in part, these are daily grades, things that we're going to be doing in class that you can then upload. However, if you are unable to come to class, you can still work on these and upload them to the assignment and get the points for them. You just kind of miss the discussion in class. And then again, lots of labs, skills, scenarios, simulations that we'll be doing in class. And then at the very end, I usually will ask you something like to write out everything you learned that day, or ask a question about a confusing point, think about what you learned that day, and then turn that in. This concept of thinking about your learning is called metacognition, and it's one of the best ways to help move some of your things from short-term memory into long-term memory. Then after class, meet up with someone, compare your notes and their notes, see if you're missing anything, fill in each other's blanks, help each other out. Go ahead and go through the lab manual for that particular chapter and fill out everything in there. Make sure that your chapter is done. A lot of students like to wait until the last couple of days to work on this, and they find that all 400 pages is a little overwhelming. So if you do it as you go, it's not bad. Quizzing yourself and quizzing others. So if you're in some sort of a study group, if you're going to go to a study group, create a list of questions and quiz each other with these questions. Don't just meet and talk and don't really do anything. Quizzing each other and quizzing yourself is one of the best ways to help move information into long-term memory. Again, thinking about what you're learning, why you're learning, how you can apply it, how it would be applied to a situation, or imagine a call on an ambulance. You have discussions that are going to be done at least one every chapter, I think, pretty close. Anyways, there's several discussions that you're going to do, and these are designed to make you think a little bit deeper about the material again. And you'll have to typically reply to the questions that are posted in the discussion and then answer one of your classmates. If you have any assignments, if you haven't uploaded, take pictures of those and upload them. If I send out a Kahoot, you feel free to play it again and then test yourself with a program called Quizlet. A lot of students like to use this. The only thing I don't like about Quizlet is it's student generated, so they came up with the questions and the answers, and they may not always have the answers correct. Now, what am I doing in all this? Because a lot of people think I don't do anything as a teacher. I just sit around and they just feel I sit here and don't do anything. Anyways, I'm doing a lot, as all teachers are. So we're creating all these learning experiences. We're creating the Kahoots, we're revising them, we're discussing presentations, creating our presentations, we're creating online lessons, we're grading the worksheets and creating new worksheets. We are creating labs and setting up labs and taking down labs and cleaning equipment and repairing equipment and getting things ready. Same thing with the simulations. We have to create all those and then set them all up and clean up afterwards. We are also answering all sorts of your messages, which is great. If you have a question, please message me. That's what we're here for. Just realize that of the 5 classes I'm teaching, plus all the Con Ed, I get a lot of messages. I typically will reply within 24 hours to every message that I get. But that's one of the things that takes up a lot of my time. Trying to find other information to supplement what we did in class. I'm doing the grading of all the work. There's going to be problems with Blackboard. There is every semester, so I have to fix those for you. If somebody is not doing well or needs additional help, I meet with you for remediation. I have to maintain my office hours, and then occasionally there's issues with clinicals, so I have to go to a clinical site and handle whatever that issue is. So some things we're doing this summer, or the semester, not this summer, discussions. Again, these are designed to make you think a little bit deeper about it. You have to reply to the questions and then reply to a classmate. I do want you to think about your answers. I get weird things like, what is the importance of CPR? And their answer is like, save lives. And that's it. That's not going to get you full points. You need more than that, like explaining why CPR works and how often we're going to use it, and that sort of thing. And all this information you can probably find either by Googling it or looking in your book or just thinking about it. And I usually ask a series of questions I want you to answer, and you will not get the points if you don't answer it. So just please answer the questions. Please, please. Study groups. I encourage you to do some study group. Either meet somewhere we used to be able to meet at restaurants, but not many restaurants are open right now, but meet somewhere, restaurant, fire department. If you want to meet up here at the college, when the college is open, we can find a room for you. So you get together with a group, and again, you're going to primarily fill in blanks for each other, some things you may have missed, although it's never as good as being in class, so don't think you can skip class and just go to a study group. Again, quizzing each other. I think you're starting to see a bit of a theme here where you want to quiz each other, throw out a question, see how well people can answer it, and then you can practice skills together. If any of you are with the fire department, a lot of times it's a great place to meet because they have some equipment that you can get out and play with. This is Quizlet, and it works kind of like a flashcard system for either terms or for questions. And this is the textbook. So as far as using the textbook, first thing you want to do is kind of skim through it. You have a table of contents that will describe what's going on when. There's objectives. There's also objectives in Blackboard. I would look at those objectives. Those are what we want you to learn on that particular topic. So the ones in the book the author wrote, the ones that are in Blackboard are the ones that I wrote, and SoftChalk. They're also in SoftChalk. And I think your lab manual. Put them in several places so you can find them because I think objectives are important. If there's any key terms, I want you to learn those. That's the beginning of each chapter. That's also where the terminology quizzes came from, those same exact words. There's a case study at the beginning of each chapter, so I would read that case study, and then as you read the chapter, be thinking about how you would use the knowledge that you're reading about to handle or manage the case that they presented at the beginning of the chapter. Make sure you read the captions. The pictures, the diagrams are all in there for a reason, so make sure you're reading the pictures with that. The author writes these books to provide knowledge to you and to make money, but they want you to get something out of it. So they're not going to put a paragraph of information in there if there isn't something important in that paragraph. So as you're taking notes, that might be a good way to kind of summarize things, is when you read through a paragraph, try to think about what the author was trying to tell you in that paragraph, and then write a question or two about what, or that could be answered in that paragraph. And then at the very end, they will discuss the case study and what kind of the correct answers are. There's also a glossary at the end, so if you ever come upon a word you don't know, that's a good way to look to find out the definition of it. And then there's something, and I won't go to it here because it'll take me away from this presentation, but go to Google Pronounce. I think it's pronounce.google.com or something like that. You can search Google Pronounce. And any word you don't know how to say, type it in, and it'll explain how to say it, and it'll sound it out for you so you get to hear it, and you can practice saying it. It'll even grade you. So it's kind of a cool way to learn new medical terms. I say this, and then I usually end up allowing some leeway with this, but do your best to keep up with things. If you procrastinate and do it all at the end, it creates a couple of issues. One, you're not learning as we're going, so you're trying to cram everything into the end, and that does not help your learning at all. Plus, if you put all the assignments in at the end, I've already graded these, and then I have to go back and find them and grade them later, so you're not going to get the feedback that you would do if you had turned them in on time. So do your very best to turn everything in on time. It won't be quite as overwhelming. That being said, every semester I have people that just don't do the work, and I don't get that. It's not the way I did school. If my teacher gave me an assignment, I completed it, and same thing here. Otherwise, you get a zero. You threw away some points. Most of these assignments we do in class, and you can take a picture and upload it. It's not that hard to complete it, so please just do them. It'll help you with your learning. Communicating with me, there's my cell phone number. If you want to text me or call me, you can email me, message me through Remind or Blackboard. Again, I'll get back to you as quickly as I can, generally within 24 hours. Now, in your lab manual, lecture notes, there are some tips to being successful, so read through those. There's also some learning suggestions that you can read through and see good ways to learn. And this is one that people want to do. They want to have the TV on as they're studying, or music on as they're studying, and they want their phone on, so when it dings and beeps and chimes and chirps and all that. A lot of evidence to show that it takes about 20 minutes. So if you're reading the chapter and your phone goes off and you pick it up and look at it and go, oh, I'll get to it later, and put it back down, it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to get back into the cycle of learning and focusing on what you were doing. So don't try to do two things at once. Don't have stuff on in the background. Just focus on the task at hand. Spend about 20-25 minutes, take a little break, and then come back and do it over again. But don't be trying to do two things at once. Now, if there is an activity that does not require much cognitive focus, like folding laundry, sure, put a podcast on in the background, listen to things, because I don't need to think about my laundry folding. I can do that. So there are some times where maybe we can multitask, but when you're really truly like trying to read a chapter or do homework, don't. Just focus on the homework. So to learn, we have to take knowledge that take the new knowledge and connect it to something we already learned or already know. So if I throw out something that's brand new, you've never seen anything like it before, it's going to be hard to learn that without making some previous connections. So as an example of that, if I say, write a 500-word article summarizing constructivism theory, you can have a hard time even beginning with that. Where if I say something like cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, you may have some concept already of what CPR is like. You've either seen it on a television show, you've had a CPR class before, but you have something that you can kind of connect it to, and that makes it easier to learn. So we are going to take very basic concepts, and then we're going to start adding to them in something called scaffolding, and that adds all to it, which is somewhat of constructivism learning theory. So you can start writing on it now. Then we have something like this, and when you look at this, you're like, I'm not really sure what this is. And that's the idea. You're a new EMT student. By the end of the semester, when we put things together like this, whoops, went too far. There we go. This will make more sense. And the first column with the green is all stuff that happens during your scene assessment. The stuff that's in the bluish, in the second from the left, is all stuff that happens in your primary assessment. The purple is all stuff that you'd find out in your secondary or in your history taking and vital signs. And then the red stuff is all stuff that you'd find in your secondary assessment. So just like we do every patient, we have a scene assessment, a primary assessment, history taking and vitals, and then a secondary assessment. And when you look at all this, maybe now you begin to see that somebody was hit by a car, they look very pale, their blood pressure is very low, they have very tender abdomen and pelvis, would probably mean they're bleeding internally. Now me, as an experienced paramedic, can look at this and go, oh yeah, in a second, I can recognize that pattern. And that's a lot of medicine, is recognizing patterns. Now this is what's kind of good, and not, because it may sound a little arrogant, but here again, with all the experience I've had, I can look at things and come up with a pattern recognition and a patient assessment and a diagnosis much faster than a new EMT. The good news is you'll be there one day too. It just takes practice, and you can do that. We're going to give you as much practice as we can this semester. Now, our working memory, this is kind of our short-term memory, stuff that we put up there. It can only hold about 3 to 5 chunks of information at a time, and if we don't do something to try to retrieve that, think about it, question about it, we'll lose it. If we do think about it, then we can go or move it into long-term memory. And this is fascinating because our brains take in everything, and theoretically can remember everything. So everything you did today, every moment, has been recorded in your brain. Problem is accessing it, and we can't always access stuff, especially if we didn't think about what we just did or what we needed to learn. And that's where retrieval becomes the problem with it. So it kind of takes all this information, these different parts, and if we don't think about it, we're not going to be able to organize it well. When we question ourselves, think about what we just learned, then it becomes much more organized into a pattern, and then we can easily retrieve that information. So a few things we can do to do active learning. One, reading the book is typically not active. I'm going to show you a method, though, that makes it a little bit more. Listening to PowerPoint or listening to me, even just lecture, is not active. Reading, especially rereading, so you read the chapter once and you go back and you just read it cover to cover again, that's not a great way to learn. That's very inefficient. There's much better ways to learn than just reading things over and over and over again. You got to be doing something as you're reading. So this SQR3 model is what we recommend. It's just one model. Seems to work pretty good. So skim, question, there's that question again, read, recite, and review. So the first thing you do is you open up the chapter, you sort of skim through it, you look for objectives and key terms, look at the pictures, maybe read the captions fairly quickly, the bold terms, what is this going to talk about, and just get an overview of the chapter. After that point, we then think about each of these bolded terms and each of these pictures and captions and try to come up with a question. So if I was looking at this one and looking at the top picture, and this is right out of your EMT book, so what are the warning signs of stress? Why does this author want me to learn about stress? Is there something that's stressful about EMS? What is stress? Is there good stress? Is there bad stress? What are the types of stress? So these are all questions that come to mind just looking at that. And then hopefully by the time and I write these down, I write them down in my notebook. And then by the time I'm done reading the chapter, I should be able to find the answers to each of these questions, and I fill those in. And that's the read part. So then I go back and I do read the chapter cover to cover and answer those questions that I generated from my questioning section, which was right after skimming it. Now, as I'm answering the questions, I say out loud the question and I say out loud the answer. That way you are saying it, you're hearing it, you're reading it, you're trying to learn different ways. So reciting it, especially if you can do it out loud. Now, I don't necessarily recommend doing this in public a whole lot, but if you can find a place to read out loud, that is helpful. And then go back and review and see if there was any questions maybe you didn't answer. If you have a question that you couldn't find an answer to, maybe you need to go back and look at that section of the book again, or maybe you need to check in other sources, see if there's an answer there for your questions. Now, we have a lot of tests in this class. In EMT class, there's like 14 different tests. We call them celebrations because we're celebrating how much we're learning. But the idea behind that is that it gives you exposure to more questions. The more questions you get, the more likely you are to do well on National Registry. And then ultimately, it just kind of gets you used to taking tests, especially on a computer. Now, this is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with. You probably know someone, or you may be the person that says, oh, I can't do math. Well, everybody can do math. You may not particularly like math, but everybody can do it. But you have already kind of set it in your head, or that person has set it in their head that that's something they just can't do. And that is not true. We do not have a fixed IQ. That is something that changes over time. It can grow. You can get better at learning. You get better at your topic. So intelligence is not a fixed trait. There isn't necessarily somebody that's stupid and somebody that's smart. We all possess the ability to grow and learn more. But that's going to take work on your part. So we're going to try to give you, starting with this presentation, some tips on how to learn better. But your work, your efforts, and then a little bit of help from other people like teachers is what's going to help you grow and learn and improve your intelligence. So that being said, you really don't know how far you could go with this. This may be something that you just absolutely fall in love with, and with the right help and with a little hard work from you, you go on to become a paramedic, then you go on to become an emergency room physician. You never know where your potential may go. When we face a challenge, or you look at a module and say, oh my goodness, this is a really long chapter, and this is a really long terminology quiz, and there's 3 discussions on this. Oh, yes, it's a lot of hard work. However, each of those learning activities is an opportunity to grow and learn more about it. So having a growth mindset, you look at hard work as a challenge that you can overcome, and when you reach the other end of it, you will be a better person. If you don't have a growth mindset, you just look at that and say, that's too hard, I give up. And if you ever have a bad outcome, you do bad on a test, you don't say, oh, I'm just dumb, or I'm stupid, or I can't do this again. You realize that you didn't get this one. That's okay. There are multiple ways to do well in this class. You have multiple opportunities to get hundreds on celebrations, your tests. In fact, your attendance counts as a celebration test grade. The lab manual will count as a test grade. You do all the soft chalk lessons that count as a test grade. You got 3 100s right there. So if you do end up doing poorly on one of the tests, that's okay. Here's your opportunity. But what you need to do is you need to look at it and go back over it and say, where did I get this wrong? What do I need to do different next time? If you do the same exact things over again, you should have the same results. So before the next test, something needs to change about how you studied, how you learned. And if you want to come talk to me about it, I'll gladly go over tests with you and help. Remember that remediation thing. So I hope this is helpful for those that couldn't make it to the first night. This is a little bit different method for me for putting these together. Make sure you get into Blackboard and start working on the required introductory assignments and get those done. That is how we're going to show and prove that you've attended class. I am excited. I love EMT class. It's just a fun class to teach. So I'm looking forward to a great semester. If you have any questions, please let me know.